I want to thank the Greenville Library System for once again allowing us to use their wonderful space, their technology, and all the wonderful people that make this possible. They have also arranged books in the back which can be checked out. If you didn't happen to have your library card in your pocket, you can, if you have an account here, a library card with the Greenville Library, you can actually use your driver's license to check out books. I didn't know that till just a couple of months ago when I found that out, when I couldn't find my card, which was out in the car somewhere. So there is a display of books related to tonight's topic. I see several of them by Erma Bombeck herself, including one, the title really caught me. It was Family, The Ties That Bind and Gag. So they have those, plus some other noted humorists from the same time period as well are listed back there. So feel free to check out any of those books and go home and have a few laughs and share the jokes with your friends as if you've made them up. I'll also mention that we can always use volunteers with Chautauqua. The program wouldn't exist without the help of our volunteers. And so if you feel in any way moved to help out in any way, then feel free. In our summer program, there are literally dozens and dozens of roles that can be done. You meet really nice people. You hang out. You can get your choice of seats in the shows. You can help out in many, many ways, getting ready, getting taken care of after the shows as well. Lots of things to do, and we invite you to sign up and be a volunteer. We can always use more folks. In the back, we have, and some of you have them with you right now. I see some in the front row here. You have our programs, our reader for 2025. Feel free to take a couple more with you and hand them out to friends and neighbors. It is amazing, after 27 years of having Chautauqua festivals in the Greenville and upstate area, because, you know, we have shows in Brevard, and we have shows in Malden and in Spartanburg and in Simpsonville and in all over downtown, you know, here downtown, campus of Greenville Tech. After 27 years, someone will say, "So, Larry, what are you doing this summer?" I said, "Well, I'm helping out with Chautauqua." "Chautauqua? What's that?" It's amazing how often I have heard that. Anyway, that way you can pass out some programs and let people know about Chautauqua yourselves. And that is a way just there to volunteer and help out, just giving out a few of these. And people may say, you know, I'd like to hear what Einstein has to say, or I'd like to hear what Erma Bombeck has to say. And they'll come out for a session and maybe have a good time and bring their friends as well. On to our presenter for this evening. Our presenter for tonight is an Ohio native who loves her retirement here in sunny South Carolina. Oh, yeah. As I do as well. Yes. She attended Kent State University, graduated from Ohio State University, and earned her graduate degree at the Johns Hopkins University. Here in Greenville, she is active in Ollie at Furman, where she has presented a program called 10 Interesting Characters, which included biographies of Pete Rose, Mr. Rogers, Julia Child, among others. She's also done several 8-week classes, including Botswana, the African Exception, and Wildlife Conservationists and the Critters They Love, which sounds like a fun class. Currently, she's doing an 8-week class called The Ohioans, of which Erma Bombeck is a part. So here we have someone who's been teaching at Furman about Erma Bombeck that you'll have a chance to hear from tonight. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Kathy Vorostek.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Larry. And I wanted to also thank Laura and Savannah for having me tonight. And I am so glad to see all of you. I recognize some of my friends from Ollie at Furman that are here tonight, as well as some friends from Greer. But I'm happy to see so many of you, and I hope you enjoy this presentation tonight of the late, great Erma Bombeck. For those of you who don't know anything about Erma, or if you do, she was from Centerville, Ohio, which is somewhere I lived for 15 years before I moved to the great state of South Carolina. She's been called the patron saint of motherhood comedy, the Socrates of the ironing board. 1927 to 1996. She was an American humorist. She chronicled the ordinary life of the Midwestern housewife. She was syndicated from 1965 to 1996 in over 900 newspapers. She wrote over 4,000 columns, published some 15 books, and had over 30 million readers. So she was quite accomplished in her life. She started out life as Irma Louise Fist, and she grew up in Dayton, Ohio. Her half-sister was Thelma. Again, there's Dayton. Her mother married when she was 14, and she had Irma when she was 16. Her father was a crane operator, and Irma lived in a very stern, very strict blue-collar environment. I would call it a very Midwestern type of growing up, where you didn't have tons of money, but there was always enough money for tap dancing for Irma. And she started tap dancing when she was 5. She was also on a local radio show in the area called Kitty Review. And she was on that program for 8 years. And there is the beautiful tapping Irma. This is a picture of Irma when, actually this is from the University of Dayton. It's her senior picture. As young as 10 years old, she always wanted to write for a newspaper and have her stories printed. She wrote a regular feature in her high school newspaper called The Owl. At age 15, though, she became a copy girl and a part-time secretary at the Dayton Journal-Herald, which today is the Dayton Daily News. At one time, she got to interview Shirley Temple, who was passing through town, and she won a staff award for the feature of the week, which garnered her $10. She met her future husband, Bill Bombeck, who was a copy boy at the paper. She attended the University of Dayton, which is a very Catholic college in Dayton. She lived at home because you couldn't afford to live anywhere else at the time. She worked full-time at Reich's department store. If you're from that area, that was a big name at the time. She also had 2 part-time jobs. She was a termite control accountant at an ad agency, which I bet she found a lot of funny things to say about that. She was also a publications person at the local Y. And then she met Brother Tom Price, who was an English professor at the University of Dayton and was a tremendous influence on her. He saw great prospects with her writing, and he wanted her to write for the UD student publication, which was called The Exponent, which she did. She also became, and her husband, Bill, they became lifelong active contacts with University of Dayton, and they were trustees for the university as well. She earned her bachelor's degree in English in 1948 from UD. And there she is. So these are some words from about Brother Tom Price and how he influenced her with her writing, which stuck with her the rest of her life. Yeah, you can write, and she did. You probably recognize this column there. So Bill Bombeck, her husband, he returned from Korea in 1948, and he also graduated from University of Dayton. In 1949, they married. They were both 21 years old. And there's Irma. So Irma got a new job. She became a part-time It was a part-time job as a newspaper woman at the Dayton Journal-Herald. However, at the time, the newspaper did not really shine up to her humor. Unfortunately, she called herself a sort of sick Eloise, if you remember Eloise. Her column was called Operation Dust Rag, and even she said it was something of a dud. So they wanted to have children, but they were told that it was probably not going to happen. So in 1954, they adopted Betsy. And Irma became a full-time housewife and pretty much gave up journalism. But surprise, surprise, in 1956, she gave birth to Andrew, and 1958 to a second son, Matthew. They then moved to Centerville, Ohio, and they became neighbors of this man, Phil Donahue. And I just also want to add, during this whole time that they were in their early marriage, she also suffered from 2 miscarriages that she kept quiet most of her life. This is their house. This was their house in Centerville, Ohio. It was built, let me go back here for a minute. It was built in 1915 and added to the National Register of Historic Places. So, Irma. And this looks like music night at home. Everybody's doing something. Irma's looking like, is it over yet? And then here she is. It looks like she's checking out an assignment by one of her children. Here are the Bombeck children, a little bit older. One thing they never tell you about child raising is that for the rest of your life, at the drop of a hat, you are expected to know your child's name and how old he or she is. There's a nice picture of Bill and Irma. Early picture with the children, another one. So At Wit's End became the name of her first column. In 1995, she resumed writing, and she wrote for the Kettering Oakwood Times weekly columns, and she got $3 a piece for those. Followed by, the next year, the Dayton Journal-Herald wanted 2 weekly columns, and she was paid $50 for those. But the really interesting thing that happened is 3 weeks later, she was in 36 major newspapers. And At Wit's End became a compilation of a lot of her columns, the book. By 1969, she was in 500 newspapers. She became very successful. And she was also writing for a lot of the women's magazines and things at the time, like Good Housekeeping and Reader's Digest and Family Circle and Redbook and McCall's. And then in 1971, the Bombecks moved to a hacienda in Phoenix, Arizona. They said they loved the beauty of Arizona, especially the sunsets. But I'm from where she's from, and I know that's not the whole reason she moved to Arizona. 2 words, winter. So 1975 to 86, for 11 years, she was featured on Good Morning America, and she did multiple writing and TV projects. And this was one of her compilations. Maybe you recognize Bill Keane, who was the cartoonist of the Family Circus. So she and Bill collaborated on a book together, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But Bill Keane, he was a syndicated cartoonist of Family Circle, and what he did is he satirized the middle-class family as Bombeck did, but from a male point of view. So the book they created together was called Just Wait Till You Have Children of Your Own. And there it is. Now, Irma died in 1996, but in the year 2000, the Irma Bombeck Writers Project was founded. And it was a conference every other year at the University of Dayton, which I'll talk to about in a few minutes. But this was a very nice memorial to Irma from Bill Keene. And the little girl says, "Do you think Irma will be there?" And the little boy says, "Daddy says we won't be able to see her, but she'll be there." It was very sweet. So some of the book titles are fun, as we already heard from Larry. No, I'm sorry, yeah, Larry. "The Grass is Always Greener Over the Septic Tank." That's a good one. Irma Bombeck Family, The Ties That Bind and Gag. "I Lost Everything in the Postnatal Depression." Motherhood, The Second Oldest Profession. "If Life is a Bowl of Cherries, What Am I Doing in the Pits?" And some of the headings of her chapters are also really a lot of fun as well. "Iron Sheets Are a Health Hazard." "I Gave Him the Best Year of My Life." "She Has a Cold, Shoot Her." "Put Your Brother Down, You Don't Know Where He's Been." "We Have Measles, It Must Be Christmas." So these are some comments from her husband, Bill Bombeck, that I thought you would enjoy. In 1986, Irma was the Grand Marshal for the 97th Tournament of Roses Parade. The parade theme that year was a celebration of laughter. And there is her whole family riding in the parade. But, you know, turnabout is fair play, and these are some comments that Irma has about Bill. This will tell you a little bit about the Irma Bombeck workshop and some other things that I think you'll enjoy. So the Writers' Workshop started in 2000. It was a 2-day, 3-night workshop every other year with breakout sessions that included humor writing, publishing processes, marketing, blogging, and past keynote speakers were Art Buchwald, Dave Barry, Garrison Keillor, and of course, Phil Donahue. More than 350 people attend each year, and actually the family of brother Tom Price gave a $100,000 gift to start an endowment fund for the workshop. Who knows Irma best? Her friends and the people she worked with. And one of those very good friends was Phil Donahue, and this is what he had to say about her. You probably remember this. Yeah, Kathy. She's trying to get to paragraph 2. Well, Irma was very concerned about education, and she wanted the best for her children. And these are some of her words. So Irma always wanted to be a columnist. She never made pronouncements on anything more controversial than static cling. But a lot was happening to the American housewife in the 70s, and as Irma said, she's not standing behind the picture window anymore. She's taken the bus and gone into town. She did get involved in issues when she lived in Centerville. She was very concerned about the status of women. She said that it broadened her horizons. She traveled hundreds of miles on speaking tours in favor of the Equal Rights Amendment before it died in 1982. She solicited local support for battered wives and children in Arizona, and she served on the boards of the Arizona Kidney Foundation and other groups. She said, "I'm writing from a different vantage point now, not dealing with motherhood constantly." In 1976, Irma started the Authors Luncheon in Arizona, and it was strictly to raise money for people that were on kidney dialysis in Arizona. Last year was the 45th luncheon. She was appointed by President Carter to serve on the President's Advisory Committee for Women. She attended to get a better insight into women and their frustrations, and she felt she was doing it for her kids. You can see her there, I believe. She's at the very end of the table. It was a very bitter disappointment for her when the ERA failed. She said, "We've got to get sex out of the gutter and back in the Constitution where it belongs." The ERA cause may be the most misunderstood word since one size fits all. And then Irma's life took a different turn. She said, "Before we sent kids to computer camps and told them they were having a good time, there was imagination among the human species." So she had a new project with Camp Sunrise and Sidekicks, and this is a camp for children with cancer. She was asked to write a pamphlet to give kids an insight into the camp's activities. And first she declined, and she said, "I don't want to joke about kids with cancer." Well, then she was invited to visit, so she went, and she discovered there is no self-pity among any of these kids. She said these kids wanted to live. If you can't handle optimism, don't hang around children with cancer. So it all turned into a book. And the children wrote the title of this book, and it was called, "I Want to Grow Hair. I Want to Grow Up. I Want to Go to Boise." All the royalties went to the research division of the American Cancer Society, and by the time that Irma spoke at the luncheon, over $1 million in royalties had already been given to the American Cancer Society. Here are some of the children. They're having a cookout. They're on a little train ride. Now, they didn't call their camp group a family. It wasn't a family. It was a campily. And this is what they came up with, their T-shirts. And it says, "Cancer sucks." So that was their message. Irma said, "All I do is watch the human condition and write it down. It's like stealing." So sadly, Irma lived and survived breast cancer, but this really sad thing is she had polycystic kidney disease since she was 20. Her father had something like it. Her son did. In fact, her son had a kidney transplant, and he ended up marrying the donor. I found that out recently. This was a very serious thing. She had already lost one kidney. The last few years of her life were very, very traumatic for her and very difficult. And she kept a lot of this quiet. People didn't know about it. But she lived with kidney dialysis just constantly, waiting for a kidney, which she finally got. She got a kidney transplant in 1996. And sadly, a few weeks after that, she died of complications from the transplant. This is the grave site. It's in Dayton. Her name. Now, this is a $29,000 rock from Arizona. It's at the grave site there in Dayton, and it was to commemorate their 25 years of living in Arizona. It was delivered by flatbed truck, obviously. It's huge. I thought it'd be nice to remember Irma and listen to some of her words of wisdom. And these were after she found out she had cancer. Irma said, "There's a thin line that separates laughter and pain, comedy and tragedy, humor and hurt." She laughed the sorrow from her life and everyone's. Irma Bombeck was 71, And that is my story of the late, great Irma Bombeck. And I thank you very much for being a great audience.
So, questions about Irma Bombeck? Yes, in the back.
Thank you. Just wondered, it's not about Irma, but were any of her children also writers?
Yes, she has a son that's one of her sons, in fact, it's Matt, lives in Los Angeles, and he does writing for, I think, TV shows or something. So yes, one of them. Good question.
Oh, in the front. Okay. Here I come.
Keeping Larry busy here.
Repeat the question. How many times was she on the Johnny Carson show?
Oh, I don't know that. Ooh, I don't know that one. Sorry about that.
73.
Yeah, probably.
12.
Sorry about that.
4.
I know she was also on with, I had another clip. This was a 90-minute presentation that I had to carve down. And she was on with just about everybody besides Johnny Carson and Jay Leno. She was on with Jay Leno a few times as well, when he had dark hair a long time ago.
Any other questions? If I may, when you first discovered her or getting ready to do a program about her in your Ohioans, what struck you most about her for yourself?
Well, I'm originally from Cincinnati, and Irma Bombeck was such a big deal when I was growing up, and all the mothers, and I mean, it's true. People had her columns taped to their refrigerators, and she was well known. There were talk shows in Cincinnati that she would be on, so I've always known about her. And the thing that struck me, I think, about her was when she discovered she had cancer, and this was a long time ago, and she said, "I'm sorry that I didn't burn the rose-shaped candles. They sat in the attic and melted and got dust all over them." And it really struck me. It's like, what are you waiting for? And I've just been really attracted by her personality ever since. And when I decided to do the Ohioans, she was my first one and an obvious choice. Thank you.
Anybody else? Going once. Oh, yes. Good. I see a couple of hands over here.
Did you ever get a chance to meet her yourself?
I did not.
I just loved Irma Bombeck, and I read a lot of her books. And my favorite line of hers, she said on the Johnny Carson show, she said, very seriously, I have come to recognize children for what they are. And the audience was silent, and Johnny Carson leaned forward, and she said, a punishment from God. They just cracked up.
She was on Carson one night when Joan Rivers was the guest host. And I mean, between the two of them, that was hilarious. You can imagine.
We have another question here.
What profession did her children choose?
I'm sorry, what?
What professions did her children choose?
I only know about Matt, and he's in Los Angeles. I really don't know what the other two chose.
Okay. And a question right over here to your right.
Did you know that Irma was in Greenville at one time and spoke on what was WYFF before, WFBC, and would take questions from people in Greenville. And I was one of the lucky ones that had a chance to say hi to her. And I can't remember what we said because I was so stunned that they asked me to speak to her. But she was here, and I think it was through NPR.
So we could call Irma Bombeck almost a native Greenvillian.
Yeah.
Because she was here doing interviews, talking to folks, including yourself. Yeah. When you spoke with her, you said you didn't remember that much about the actual exchange maybe, but what did you feel when all that was going on? Yeah, so she's an idol, and you're just sort of bumfuddled watching your idol. All right, any other questions? Thank you so much for coming. Pass out programs to anyone you can find. Thank you.